All right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from CinemaSins, joined as always by the voice of CinemaSins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Scher.
Hi.
And we have a very special episode here today.
Yeah.
Oh, we have the Maltins, as in Leonard Maltin and Jesse Maltin.
Yay.
Double the Maltin, double the
That's
fun.
right. From Maltin On Movies, which we just did.
Yeah.
And now we're turning it on them. We're turning the focus on them.
You may have seen us trivia compete against Leonard and Jesse Maltin
That's right.
on the Schmodown. You may have heard Jesse guest on our podcast a few months back via Skype. And now they are in town this week for the Nashville Film Festival. And we were not going to let them get away without having them both guest again in studio.
Yes.
And boy, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to have guests who are in some form part of the industry that we're in and everything. We've had like some interesting like guests just in the film industry, like Simser, who does the storyboards and stuff like that. Having actual movie critics and people who know and love movies, that's a big, huge thing for us, and especially someone I've seen forever on TV and used to at Hollywood 27. Used to have the Leonard Maltin home video guide. Me and a guy used to play a game with it, like used to try to guess the year, the actors in the movie, all that type of stuff. That was the IMDb before the IMDb.
No kidding.
Of course, the IMDb was still around, but we couldn't access it at work. You know, it was that book was the IMDb for us. Glad you could join us.
Well, we're very glad to be here.
Yeah.
I think I speak for both of them.
No, I'm
At
good.
least one of you is glad to be here.
I love listening to your podcast, Maltin On Movies. I
So
feel
good
like,
at plugging.
Yeah, I feel like the guests that you have really, really open up to you guys in a way that I don't hear that anywhere else. And you don't get to see. You had somebody like Al Pacino. I've never seen an interview with Al Pacino before. And he just opens up like he's just a normal guy and everything. A weird. Imagine that.
We were thrilled beyond words, is all I can say. I can't pretend to have been blasé. Now, I have interviewed him before, multiple times, actually, but not in a long while.
Yeah.
But I knew that we'd always hit it off and had a good conversation. I know that he likes to talk. You don't have to drag things out of him.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Those things I knew going in. But past that, nothing.
No
And he was promoting his documentary about his stage production of Salome, which he did like 8 years ago, something like that, and where he discovered Jessica Chastain.
Wow.
And this documentary is her first, the film of the play, the filmed record of that production.
Is Wild Salome is the documentary.
Right.
And then
Salome.
Salome is the film.
So
And
it was
they
her
did
first
a double
film.
release kind
wow.
of a thing, so you could see.
And he directed it.
Yes. So the documentary is essentially the making of both the stage production and also the film, and then the film is just the film. And
That's enough about that. Anyway, it got Al Pacino in our studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we never dreamt that we would ever bring up The Godfather or Dog Day Afternoon or Serpico or
we
any
didn't
of
know
those
what
things.
to do, to be honest. We didn't know.
The man is filled with stories.
This, but we didn't know. I can always read my dad, and I can usually tell where he's going or what he wants to ask. And in this case, I could see that we were both nervous because you don't want to say, "So, how about The Godfather?" Like you don't want to do that to him because first of all, that's not what he's there for. He's there for this, but. When he just naturally started going into these stories, I looked over at my dad and we were kind of like, "Oh my God!"
Well, him talking about meeting the actual Frank Serpico and all of that. That's just gold.
Yeah.
And like I said, you don't get to hear that very often. I don't think I've ever seen an interview with Pacino ever. And if you do see an interview, it's because he's there to just promote his thing. And then
This you get these Tonight Show or something like that, 3-4 minute sound bites, and you guys are doing this long form interview process.
That's what we love about it. I mean, I've been on the other side of that microphone, that table, as an author promoting my books, over the years, and I know that it's such a blessing when you get to talk for more than 6 or 7 minutes.
Sure, yeah.
And that's what we get to do with our guest is just talk. in a relaxed setting, and it seems to give them the ability to relax, and they don't feel uptight talking to us.
So I was watching the YouTube video of your interview with George Lucas. I guess when the special edition of Star Wars, the original trilogy, came out in '95.
Oh, by the way, that was the first movie I ever built in the theater in projection. Was Star Wars, the reissue in
A New Hope or
97, 98, whatever year it was.
97.
97. That was the first movie I ever built.
Because they did it. Did they do it all within the same year? All three
Yeah,
of
it was
them?
January, February, March.
Yeah.
Fox, in spite of all that had happened from the original trilogy, when they reissued them, they still didn't think they were going to do that hot.
Really?
Yes. They were actually taken aback. They couldn't believe the numbers they got the first weekend. They questioned, maybe we could still stagger the release of the L'Amour, drain a few more dollars out of this. They just didn't get it.
They were huge, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In a January, February, March release, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think New Hope did better than all the other ones, but they weren't like, they made $100 million again or anything like that. But they were, I think, 50, somewhere around there, 50 million, somewhere around there. Which is still
For a reissue.
for a reissue, yeah.
And I guess we've kind of gotten used to Lucas as this, mythical figure. Very aloof in that interview, very kind of monotone. Is that what you got from it too?
I was just interested in what he had to say.
I'm asking you about an interview 20 years old.
No, but it's an important one. It's the one that I get asked about all
really?
the time. Not asked about. It's brought up to me.
Oh.
I can almost tell when it's coming. It's usually somebody 20-ish, 25-ish. If they come up to me and they say, the first time I ever saw you, and I'll say no, knowing what the answer is. I used to watch you interview George Lucas on those original cassettes of Star Wars. They sold 25 million cassettes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really? I had them.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
It's the only VHS they've kept.
Oh, really?
In many cases.
Because they've never, I had a nerd friend explain this to me, they've never reissued the films.
It's the only time that
Like, I guess
it's
those
the first
are the
and last
only
time.
pure
Those are the
versions.
exact versions that played in theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why
Because
people
they had
hold on
that
to
silver
it.
box set. There was a
Yeah.
silver and a gold, the widescreen and the...
But you're forgetting the other version of what people say, which is, I used to have to fast forward through you all the time to watch Star Wars.
Was it at the beginning?
That's,
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, really?
But that's my favorite. I love it because it's so honest. It's just like, oh my God. People come up to me, oh my God, I love your dad. I had to fast forward through and watch Star Wars. I'm like, thanks.
I was very pleased with. I thought he was very responsive.
No, he went on.
And articulate. I talked to him for over an hour and a half.
Oh, really?
And they cut them into 7-minute segments.
Wow.
And at the time, he was not that readily available for interviews. It was more of an event,
Right.
having an interview with him anywhere in any medium. And I said to the people at Fox Video, put out a cassette of the whole conversation. Nothing he said was dull. It was all interesting. And I'm not a Star Wars fanatic,
Right.
but I found everything he said interesting, and they wouldn't do it.
It is very interesting to watch that now where he's teasing the upcoming. He's like, maybe by 98, 99, we'll be getting another Star Wars story. You asked him if he was interested in directing anymore. Of course, he ended up directing the prequels and everything. Yeah, it's just so fascinating seeing that from this lens because I saw one that was all condensed together, those 7-minute segments. And, you switch positions and things like that. But the way that he kind of explained this was, as he said, very interesting, but it also seemed just kind of, like he was, pardon the pun, on a different planet,
Well, George is not a cuddly, warm, fuzzy type of guy. He's very bright, needless to say, and he loves talking about his work. You don't have to push too hard. Get him to talk about his work.
But we have seen him be cuddly. We've seen the two.
Oh, yeah.
There are two people in the world who can make him that way. Is kids.
Ah.
Katie is, I think, my age or around my age.
Well, I teach at USC. George's alum alma mater, rather. And this is the alma mater for whom he wrote a check, now maybe 10 years ago, for $175 million. Wow.
They went back and
rebuild-
asked for more, by the way.
Of course they did.
It didn't cover the
They
expenses.
got more.
But he completely
All I
rebuilt.
want is $1 million, George. That's all
he-
I need.
He rebuilt the campus,
Really?
for the School of Cinema, and
Not the whole campus,
Right.
the cinema.
the cinema.
Should be the whole campus.
Honestly.
And
Yeah.
and when asked why, the New York Times asked him why he did, and he said because cinema still isn't taken seriously as an academic, field by most universities. And the one thing universities respect is money,
Yes, that is very true.
and that's why he wanted to, put on a good show, build an impressive place, which he has done, and it shows incredible loyalty.
Yeah.
And it shows incredible foresight to want to pass something along to the next generation of filmmakers.
And he comes down a lot to the school
Yeah.
for fundraiser stuff,
Right.
and they'll do events. He comes down, so he puts his money where his mouth is. Like
So-
he is there for the school.
So one night we have a break where I show new movies and have some of the filmmakers there afterwards for Q&A.
Oh, okay.
And we have an opening section of the class. It's a long night. And then there's a break. And one night during the break, a nice young girl comes over to me to introduce herself. And because I have like 350 students, I don't get a lot of one-on-one time. She says, hi, my name's Katie. I said, hi, Katie. Nice to meet you. She said, I think you know my father. I said, really, what does he do? She said, he's a filmmaker. I said, what's his name? She said, George Lucas. So that's his daughter, Katie.
And she's lovely, and she's very bright, and yeah, all the good things. But the first time that we ever saw George really smile, because in photos he just doesn't normally smile.
Yes, yeah.
The first time, I don't remember what event it was at USC that he was there for. It was a night Alex was part of putting all that stuff together. I don't remember what it was.
It was in the gallery there.
It was. I'm trying to think if it was like the TV stuff. USC does a lot of really, really cool
Exhibitions.
and he was there for one of them. And I saw him look at Katie, and he smiled. He really smiled. And I just totally had that moment of, he looked at her like a dad looks at his kid.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, my heart. And I suddenly, everything made sense a bit.
That's
He went,
fascinating.
okay, so there is a different thing we don't get to see
And then we met him with his wife.
at Sundance.
And
He got to interview on stage George Lucas and Robert Redford.
Oh, wow.
You know,
yeah.
like you do.
But the best part was backstage beforehand.
Backstage was the highlight of life.
where they were very loose and very relaxed, and we met his wife Melody, who was a pretty remarkable woman.
hilarious.
She's a financial whiz.
Yeah, whip smart.
Yeah.
Like, you get it. And she showed us. So first of all, just watching her in the same way people they think it's funny the way that my dad and I are, because obviously you look at my dad with reverence, and a lot of people do, understandably so. It's still my dad, so I will put bunny ears on him. I can do all the things that I think other people might want to do, and I can just do whatever I want.
Right.
And it was a similar kind of vibe watching them, which is that's his wife. So she's not going to take any of his BS. Like, there's not, so she's just calling him out on stuff, and they're making fun of each other. And that was wild. Then she showed me at that time their child was probably like a year, little guy.
An infant.
And she showed me this photo of the two of them in bed with the same crazy bed head, like matching.
And George was
And-
sleeping.
And no, they'd just woken up.
Oh, is that what it is?
What I remember about it is that they look the same, and it's so cute. And it was another one of those, this is not real. Like, I'm seeing this photo of, George in PJs with his infant child. But that was really special to see him kind of...
That's a side that you just don't
Yeah.
see from.
He's always
Yeah.
been very nice to me.
Oh, yeah, always very, very nice. I've never
Wow.
seen him be rude to honestly, I've never seen him be rude to anyone. He's just very firm. So if he doesn't want to do an interview, he's not doing it. If he doesn't want to do something. But frankly, I get it. It's kind of like that thing of someone gets called a diva.
Yeah.
And some people are, and some people are jerks. But some people are just very firm.
Yep.
And they tell you what they want and how they want it. And to me, there is a difference. And if you're polite about that, then you do you.
Well, yeah, and there's a certain kind of person like a George Lucas who has more than earned the right to be particular about what he
can't
is and
walk
isn't
down
going
the
to
street.
do.
He cannot walk down the street. That was part of it, was that like they have to ghost him in and out of everywhere.
Right.
And you get it. And some people are screaming, you know, is he going to come out and do, you know, sign autographs and take pictures? It's like, no, because then he'd never go home.
I've often said stuff like, I feel
know?
bad for Taylor Swift. She can't just go out for a Starbucks without becoming like front page news on TMZ.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I've derailed us.
What is this class, and what do you show there?
I inherited a class. I inherited a class that George Lucas took
Oh, really?
when he was a student.
Wow.
Ron Howard took this class. A lot of interesting people took this class. It was started about 1960 by a then very prominent film critic named Arthur Knight, who wrote the first one-volume history of film called The Liveliest Art, which came out in a paperback, and it was, everybody had this book. I think I was in high school. It was the only book of its kind. Just a really good, solid, concise, but comprehensive history of film. Arthur went to USC and said, you know, you're here in the middle of Hollywood. Why aren't we inviting movie makers to bring their current films down to campus? And so that's what they started doing. When he started doing that, Alfred Hitchcock was still making movies. But so was John Cassavetes. And he had them and everybody in between.
Wow.
And so it was very popular. And it had a terrible name, Theatrical Film Symposium. It still has that name. We've never come up with a better one.
No one uses it.
In the old days, people called it Thursday Night at the Movies. And then for years, people just call it and still call it by its course number, which is 466. And if you meet anybody from USC who's been in the film department or even just around, and you say, did you take 466? Oh, yeah. So he taught it, Arthur taught it for many years, then he retired. It was taken over by Charles Champlin, who was for many years the lead critic of the LA Times and kind of a cultural ambassador around town. Very classy guy, very genteel. And he did it for quite a long time, and more interesting people took it. And then he retired, and they hired somebody to take his place who it turned out was having personal issues involving alcohol. And that was a disastrous semester. It was the fall. So over the holiday break, the associate dean of the school at the time, Rick Jewell, a wonderful guy, took me to lunch and wooed me to see if I would come in January for the new semester and take over this class. And I said, well, I'm flattered. I know it's a famous class. I said, I just don't know if I have the time. He said, you don't have to grade papers. You don't have to book the films or the guests. We have somebody on staff who'll do that. You don't have to attend faculty meetings. I said, really?
Go on.
He essentially put it pretty plainly. He said, we just need you there Thursday night. That's what we need. I said, well, I'll give it a try. And 20 years later, I'm still doing it.
Wow.
Awesome.
In the interim, I do get involved in the booking of the films and the guests with a wonderful guy who's on staff who does all the heavy lifting in that area. But every now and then, I have a connection that I can use to help seal the deal, or I've seen a film he hasn't yet, and I said, I'd love to show that. So we collaborate. And so it's teaching at its best. And though I regret not having more of a relationship with my students because it's such a large auditorium.
Sure, I'm sure that's a very popular course.
It is a very popular course.
I was going to say, what degree do they give to the person who just takes that course over and over and over and over? Because that would be me.
I've had some students who've taken it 3 times.
Really?
Wow,
That's what's crazy is because it's semester by semester, he's got like 700 kids a year
Yeah.
and 20 years.
Yeah.
So everywhere we go, Professor Maltin, Professor Maltin, Professor Maltin.
That's awesome.
It's wild. Anywhere we are, someone comes over and says, Professor Maltin, I took your class in 1998. I took your class, whatever it is. Professor Maltin, Professor Maltin.
But I had 2 unforgettable nights. One was with Sidney Poitier,
Yeah.
Wow.
who didn't want to show any of the racially provocative movies. I wanted to show the one with Tony Curtis, the Defiant Ones. No, he wanted to show something more benign. So we showed at his request To Sir with Love,
Oh, wow.
which is a very entertaining movie. Everyone enjoyed it, and then there he was. There's the man. And what's funny is he doesn't really like to talk about his movies. He's not an anecdotal guy about those movies. But what he does like to talk about is his journey. And that's what he started to do, and you could hear a pin drop.
Wow.
He had that class in the palm of his hand. It was, and then afterwards, stayed, shook hands with every student who wanted to meet him, gave his undivided attention, a class act.
A lot of guests do that. A lot of the guests will stay, and
Yeah.
the kids will line up and ask questions. And for the most part, they're really generous with their time. And
Yeah.
they're not allowed to ask for autographs or photos because
We got to take this class.
that's not.
Seriously, I need
You
to
know.
audit this
It's
thing.
not appropriate to a classroom.
Yeah.
Right.
Even
no,
though
I
it's
know.
not-
Oh, yeah.
Though one night when we had you had Orlando Bloom and Mark Ruffalo, they started saying, "Did you want a photo? Did you want a photo?" And suddenly, like for miles.
yeah.
just-
The last person I had in that sort of theme of old movie and older performer was Angela Lansbury,
Oh, my God.
who had been willing to do it for years, but things kept getting in the way. Finally, I got her, and I showed Frank Capra's State of the Union, which is a film with Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn.
Wow.
And the third lead is an impossibly young Angela Lansbury, who always played older than she was.
Right.
Yep.
She was like 23 when she made this movie. Yeah. Well, she got her first Oscar nomination for Gaslight when I think she was 20 or 21, something
Oh,
like
wow.
that. I may be off. Don't hold me to these facts.
We'll fact check.
I need a fact check on this. But she came, and she too, just incredibly candid and forthcoming. She talks without hesitation about her son's problem with drugs and how she decided to deal with it, which was to move her family to Ireland. She felt that L.A., even the tonier part of L.A., was just not healthy. And he'd fallen into this drug, problem. So her kids went kicking and screaming to Ireland, where they bought a castle. She and her husband bought a castle. And they did straighten out their lives. And her son ended up directing some episodes of Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, really?
Yep. And so she talked about all this.
Wow.
This is a famous person
Yeah.
telling pretty candid stuff. So again, I interviewed her. I asked the kids at the beginning of the class, I call them the kids, my students. They're most of them 20-somethings. And I said, all right, how many people know? I said, this is not a test. How many people know who Angela Lansbury is? Every hand went up. I said, this is from Murder, She Wrote, probably, right? They said, yeah. Yeah. BAFTA, the British Academy of Film and Television, had done a tribute to her and put together a terrific 5-minute sort of career reel with baby pictures and, tracing her life. And at one point, they had from a TV special her standing in front of an orchestra singing Beauty and the Beast. And in the middle of it, it transitions to the animated film where she's Mrs. Potts. And you heard from my class, like a wave, and it's like, oh, they didn't realize that's the same. Okay, good. So when I opened the evening to Q&A, and again, they didn't quite know what to ask, and one girl sitting like in the last row of this big auditorium says, "Could you sing Beauty and the Beast?"
Wow.
Now I'm about to say, "Oh, that's not fair." It's late at night, and, and she's 81, and you just can't do that. Something in me shut up. Something in me said, "Just shut up." And Miss Lansbury said, "Oh, I couldn't." Well, all right. And she sang the first couple of lines,
Oh, my God.
a cappella, and the place went wild.
Yeah.
They went crazy. And then afterwards, she, like Mr. Poitier, stayed and shook every hand and gave several minutes of undivided attention. She asked each one, what is your major? What do you hope to do?
I cried.
You know.
I just cried. I was like, I love you so much.
What can you say? You know?
Man,
That's amazing.
Those are amazing moments.
Okay, so do you guys have anything else? I've got a million questions, but we can't keep going.
Yeah, I think we should
That's what
very
dinner's
full
for,
plate.
guys.
Exactly. I want to thank the Maltins for coming in
Yes.
here.
Man.
Thank you, guys.
This is a treat for us. We don't get a chance to do these kind of interviews very often, and we're glad that you're gracious with your time and everything.
We're happy to be here. We're flattered.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. All right, well, if you want to go to Sincast presented by CinemaSins on Facebook or SoundCloud or Twitter or anything you want to comment about this episode, please do. That'd be great.
Bring it. Tons of comments on the
Let's
last episode.
tell everybody again where we can find your guys' podcast and Twitters.
So our podcast is called Maltin On Movies, and it's through Nerdist. It's on iTunes and Spotify, like 17,000 different places.
Yes.
I have found. So Maltin On Movies. My dad is at Leonard Maltin on Twitter and on Instagram, and I'm at Jesse Maltin, same places, and leonardmaltin.com.
Yeah, definitely worth a listen. I listen to it all the time. We've got a lot of great
it's
guests
really,
on
really
there.
good,
We
yeah.
get really
Thanks,
down
guys.
deep. Some people I would never think too, like Patton Oswalt and Bill Hader know so much about movies.
So
Yeah.
You know?
much.
And it's like I always liked those guys, but I didn't know they were that deep into
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
you know?
yeah, they are.
Yeah, so go and listen to
He
that
brings
stuff.
it out of people.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
thing. They meet him and they're so excited to just
Like, I gotta bring up
movie
my
nerd.
game.
Yeah, I love it.
That'll do it for this week. It's Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, Barrett Scher, Jesse Maltin, and Leonard Maltin. We'll see you next time.